I'm joined today but with my good friend Blue from Overly Sarcastic Productions. We all live. I can maybe actually control the game. Indeed. Yep. Exactly. They can't swim. Exactly. They weren't able to swim, and the pathfinding doesn't exist, and it just did a thing. And I can prove I can run around, but I am not seeing people's chat. So if people are talking, for some reason things are not loading there. Okay. OBS. Yep. There we go. We're good. Yeah. Hopefully it's not too crowded. Oh look, I already fell off a cliff. Well, Assassin's Creed 1 life. Anyway, exactly. And oh boy, you can tell it's so bad. So anyway, as we're starting to run, to kind of brief everyone, we're chasing down Robert du Sablé, assuming I can figure out where the hell the exit to Jerusalem is. Oh wait, I need to talk to the Assassins Bureau. We didn't. Oh, interesting. Try that again. Try that. Do we have audio
Okay.
now?
Let's, I think we do.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, we're good.
Yep, I forgot to hit an unmute.
It's okay. It is just me being cursed.
You know,
Maybe we should very, very quickly redo the introduction.
Indeed.
Even though no one will hear the fantastic jokes we were cracking in that like
Absolutely.
30 intervening seconds.
exactly. So this is a little history. I am a scholar, medieval history scholar. I have 2 degrees in the Middle Ages. Hello? There's an NPC who did not spawn.
Uh-oh. Where's our boy?
Malik did not spawn. Luckily, that is an easy enough fix. We can just exit the enemy animus and reload it. So that's wild. In the meantime, I have 2 degrees in medieval history, and so this show is kind of all about playing games that do history and kind of seeing how they work. My current research is all about that. And so we've been playing Assassin's Creed 1 in preparation for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and to kind of see, well, how it does history, and how the franchise started doing history. So we're going to take on like Robert du Sablé and Al-Mualim, and hopefully it'll make sense.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know if Malik is supposed to spawn.
This is very curious.
I'm supposed to go like
do you-
399 meters. Where is he? 400
Pull up
meters
your
away.
map.
Yeah. Where am I supposed to oh, there. It's the Two Kingdom is flashing, so let's assume we're going out here.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes
Yep.
sense.
So he's despawned because I
yeah,
already
map
talked to
just
him.
needs to leave.
Yep.
Malik is in quarantine, says Linear Assassin. Malik is responsibly social distancing in away from his bureau.
Unlike every peasant or every beggar in this game.
Yeah, oh my gosh, wear a mask, people. Let's see, what else do we have in the chat? PersonMan000 asks, how historically accurate is the Animus? Well,
Yes.
it's accurate to 2020 because there's only one person in it. It's just like big empty void. Sorry, too much 2020 humor. I gotta tone this down.
Oh, hey, a flag.
Let's see.
Accidentally working on Altair's crippling flag addiction.
Oh, Altair, budding vexillologist.
Oh god, there I just aggroed every
You just
guard
did the guard.
because
Oh
Pathfinder.
god. Oh my god, the entire kingdom of Jerusalem is on your ass right now.
I know, it's terrible. Don't worry about it. Just gonna run.
Speaking of vexillology, am I remembering it correct that the flag of Jerusalem is one of the first proper, like, flags that we ever get in history? Because I recall it being that the flag of St. George, as adopted by Genoa and then very shortly after England, was, like, one of the first flags, because it's just, like, a little red cross on a white
Yeah.
field. And the flag of Jerusalem, I thought, was after that because it's a gold cross and a couple other smaller gold crosses on a white field. But
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that's the accurate story or if I was just misled by the internet.
As far as I know, it is a pretty accurate. It's not. I need to actually get into the kingdom this time for the first time in a while. It's deriving out of a kind of military standards, including the Ayyubid or I guess it's in place before the Ayyubids in the 12th century, but it's ultimately coming out of military standards from the Crusading era. But you're correct that it is one of the first ones that regularly has like a country flag as a meaningful thing.
Gotcha.
Okay, we are heading out to Arsuf this time. So by the way, chat, what year does this game take place in? Because this game has no idea what year it takes place in, so it's relying on all of you to figure it out.
No, Max HD 2490 Dark Ages is not an acceptable answer.
I don't know.
I apologize. That is the only fully unacceptable answer.
No. When we get to Akar, it will be the Dark Ages because they applied a gray filter to literally the entire level.
Oh yeah, they turned down the brightness in Akar. Yeah, so we've got a lot of 1193, at least 7 years ago. 2040, Third Crusade, I thought.
Yeah.
At least 1 year ago.
It is in the Third Crusade. So nominally it's 1191. Around the time when Richard is marching from Acre to Jaffa. But we are going to the site of a battle, Arsuf, that took place in 1192. So this game has no idea what year it is.
Yeah, I'm actually going to do a little check here, because sometimes there are time skips in the Assassin's Creed games that are like recognized if you go digging into the database, but they won't exactly name drop. Oh, we're in a new year now. Assassin's Creed 2 does that a lot. They make it very clear when every part of the game takes place, but a lot of other games are real iffy on it. But I'm trying to look to make sure that they don't pull a sneaky and say, well, actually, I kind of wait for 1193 because all the marketing was like 1191.
1191. 11. Yup.
Yeah.
This is the year in which Richard did things. Also, these guys with swords are trying so hard, and then I just kind of ride around them. Turns out being infantry against cavalry is just a bad plan. Anyway, I shouldn't mention I got myself turned around. That's awkward. Let's try that again, going the correct way to Arsuf. We are going to fight, or to kind of stop Richard the Lionheart and Salah al-Din from being manipulated by the super important Grandmaster of the Templars, who has totally understood everything and has been playing us for fools for the entire time. Robert du Sablé, who has been running a global conspiracy for many years. Except, do you know how long at this point? Let's assume 1192. Robert de Sablé has been the Grandmaster of the Templars for less than a year. They don't mention that part. At all. It's just he becomes the Grandmaster of the Temple, or of the Order of the Temple, at the Siege of Acre in 1191. So when the game starts, he's been at the job for maybe a month.
The newbie takes control and gets fucking murdered by Altair. Yeah, so I looked up on Assassin's Creed Wiki and a couple other places that theoretically would have when it's set, and everything points to, it starts in 1191, but nowhere really says and then it goes until 1192. So
exactly.
I mean, eventually we're kind of splitting hairs here, but they definitely make it seem 1191, that's the year, Third Crusade, huh? Whereas there are other games that have much more egregious time skips, such as Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which starts nominally in 431 or 433 BC, but ends up going to the battle of, oh gosh, it's the battle where Brasidas bites it, which is fully 10 years later. It's like 421. So the game takes place over a long time, but it would never let you know that. Assassin's Creed Origins has a 4-year time skip in the span of like 45 minutes of game time. So it gets wacky.
Oh gosh, I've been playing a lot of Valhalla recently, and the controls are so different that I just did some dumb controls and got myself hurt into the process. But yeah, they never ever mention anything resembling a time skip. No, come on, I can't grab him? Hello? Weird. I wanted to just throw this guy off the cliff. Oh well. There's nowhere to leap of faith off of this. So, why did you who?
Just gotta.
Oh, I actually had to kill the people in order to get in. Odd. We have given up literally every premise of being stealthy. Literally every single one. It's not good.
Quick step away. I'm super sorry, but I will be right back.
Okay. Ow. Look at all these combats. Oof. Ow. Okay, so in the meantime, we are... Oh. Dealing with Ubisoft glitches as, to ignore all the bodies in the background. And we're just gonna Hidden Blades counter people, and it'll be fun. So yeah, our main antagonist in this game, to kind of outline, I guess, the main conflict, as it were, our main antagonist is the, or our main players, I guess, are the Order of the Temple, also called the Templars, and the Hashashin, who are really, really interesting to compare. I've said this in earlier streams, but since we have a much larger audience this time, to kind of repeat it, the... Good shooting, my guy. Both the Templars and the Hashashin are formed in the time following, kind of, I guess, between the First and Second Crusades, so in the 1120s. They have... I don't wanna, let me just run. They both form in the 1120. I have to kill everyone. That's terrible.
Oh, that sucks.
But they continue to have, or kind of peak in cultural prominence around the Third Crusade, so right in the time this game takes place, and continue to have presence in the Levant, and kind of regional authority for the Templars across Europe, for the Hashashin, a little bit around the collapsed Ayyubid state, until the 14th century, when they are destroyed, the Templars, by the order of Philip the Fair, who just arrests the Grand Master of the Temple and executes all of them. Partially because he owed them too many taxes, and he didn't like that.
Yeah, that's the thing that I feel like happens a lot with private organizations that end up being on the wrong side of the king. Banks in the late Middle Ages and Renaissance often got into rough spots where they were kind of like forced to give the king a loan if he asked for it, and then if the king decided, I don't have to pay that back, the banks would just kind of collapse.
Yep.
So, ended up being a very weird situation.
The Templars were bankers. That was one of the things they did quite well. And it's one of the ways that they received a whole lot of wealth. Because around this time in the Third Crusade, they are ludicrously wealthy. And so it makes them a really interesting point of comparison. But ultimately, what we are comparing for the entire meta plot of Assassin's Creed is a meta plot that says a Christian militant extremist group and a Nizari Ismaili extremist group, who both went and did religiously motivated violence, are the two groups that kind of are competing for control of the world. My guy. So,
Oh boy, what the heck was that?
this game has been glitchy for literally every time I've played it, and so bodies just kind of do stuff when they are not grounded.
That was exquisite.
Yeah. So that is something that is kind of always part of the... When we're talking about Assassin's Creed, that's something that we've got to talk about. Because you can't simply ignore the fact that we are ultimately having a kind of leaning into the clash of civilizations here with two fairly extremist groups who did a lot of violence.
Yeah. The implication with the assassins, at least as they're portrayed in the games, is that they are a pretty aggressively borderline atheistic group, because the way that Altair talks about the higher powers of the people on both sides of this conflict that he's killing, it really gives the sense that he doesn't super believe in God.
He super doesn't believe in God.
I think the fact that he's actively killing both, Muslim leaders and Christian leaders shows that the historical counterparts of the Hashishin and the Templars are fundamentally kind of on a different level than they are in the game, because what I think the game is trying to go out of its way to show is in this version of these organizations that they kind of take some creative liberties with, they're not like one monolithic body of like, oh, we are the Templars, we do Templar things, but even in this game, when the Templars are still like Templars, they are on all of the sides.
You say the Templars are still Templars.
I mean,
there's exactly one target that is actually a Templar.
Yeah, because they're all like, air quotes, Templars, even though only one of them is actually a like historical Templar. Does that make sense? And the fact that this is so confusing is evidence to what's so finicky about this game, because like this is one of the only game that actually has what were historically Templars. Like the guys with the armor who did the crusading, what we were just talking about right now. But even though they were like objectively like Christian extremists, the game portrays them as not really like feeling motivated by super one side or the other, because Al-Mualim is Templar, all these guys on both sides are Templars, so it ends up being very weird for the purposes of trying to understand the real history, because they to their credit, they show very early on that the organizations in this game world are very different from the organizations, as they would have been in real life, for better and worse. So the game definitely skirts a lot of the moral questions surrounding two religious extremist groups basically having a 1,000-year-long war. But I think one of the smarter things that they did in the series to avoid that kind of problem, I would venture, was going right out of the gate to like de-religiousify them and make them have more political and organizational and philosophical motivations than outright religious ones. Am I making sense? It's really hard to talk about this game.
Yes, but I'm not sure. Yes, but I'm not sure I agree with you.
Okay, that's valid.
Like they do that with the Templars, and I think overall, I think you're right. I kind of characterized it last stream as a very kind of postmodern take on history and society, because they are ultimately, to a large extent, saying that none of this is real. And so, crap. It is what people are choosing to believe, and it's all very much socially constructed. And that is extremely postmodern in its flavoring. But to say that they're simply disconnecting it from the religion and are doing a whole lot to really clarify that, I think is not true, because like the Assassin's motto, "Nothing is true, everything is permitted," is actually supposedly the last words of the founder of the historical Hashishin, the Nizari Shia Ismaili group, Hassan ibn Sabah. supposedly those are his final words. What they actually mean is much debated, but you can't really understand them outside of a religious Islamic context to any meaningful sense. So, it's like they play with the ideas, but then try and interpret them in an aggressively postmodern way to avoid having to actually engage with the religion and the religious philosophical ideas that ultimately would completely fundamentally shape the way this game, or the actors in this game, kind of treat themselves, the world that they are seeing, and what's literally everything that's going on. Like, saying a piece of Eden, literally a relic with legitimate magic powers, would somehow persuade the Templars that God is not real? In the 12th century? Huh?
Yeah, that is pretty silly, isn't it?
What? Actually,
Yeah.
how?
No, that's fair. I guess I often, even for all the criticisms I levy at Assassin's Creed, I often try to give them credit. But I definitely see, wow, all of those people spawned in at once. They were not there a second
Yeah.
ago. I guess I'm trying to see what they're going for, but you're definitely right that even off the bat, they're putting themselves into a fairly sticky situation between the history they're drawing from and clearly trying to insert their game lore into, and the real-world heavy baggage of the organizations that they're kind of, you know, staking their claim with. So they dealt themselves a difficult hand fairly early on by trying to ground it in, you know, Hashishin and the Templars, for all of the coolness that, you know, and cool historical flavor text that it entails. They dealt themselves a tricky hand, and that is a theme that recurs throughout the Assassin's Creed franchise.
Oh, yes it does.
They wanted cool stuff, but they put themselves in some real icky, sticky situations to make that happen.
Yep.
Still, to be fair, I think that this game definitely is a lot better overall than, say, Valhalla. You have to, like, recognize the levels that we're operating with, because I would venture, and I know that my standards are lower than yours, Adam, but I would venture that we are working on some pretty nuanced discussion here, as opposed to Valhalla, where it's like, this is objectively bullshit in a lot of ways. So I just want to, like, make sure that we're like,
Yeah.
at least on some level, recognizing the differences in, like, the levels that we're operating on.
For right now, I think yes, but we get to some true nonsense. As we do the city tour, I'll kind of sum up the game so far with all the other assassination targets, and I think there is some patently blatant bullshit nonsense in this game as well. In that way, this kind of issue of trying to negotiate popular imaginations, unfortunately, an often problematic association as part of attempting to have cool historical time period to play around in. That's been around since the beginning.
Yeah.
And so yeah, by the way, here's actually a fun bit of patent nonsense. Talking about Richard the Lionheart, who we can see here with the red. Ultimately, this game goes to pretty great lengths to make him into a pretty noble figure. Who, you know, he's actually listening to us instead of his lieutenant, and in fact one of the masters of his navy. Robert IV of Sable was assigned to be one of the two commanders of Richard the Lionheart's navy in the Third Crusade, and in fact greatly strengthened it between Sicily and Acre and the march to Jaffa. But he's listening to Altair, this actual assassin. And now, totally a fair and balanced combat experience. Trial by combat
playing field.
Ow. Ow, Robert just owned me.
Yeah,
hey.
Robert hits like a tank
17 times, yeah.
to the back of a semi-truck.
And I cannot counter him. I need to be dodging. He's gonna own me. If I can't kill everyone else fast, I'm going to be in trouble. Hey, you cannot do this. This is going to be the scariest fight in the game by quite a margin. Honestly, I think Al-Mualim is a lot easier than Robert. But anyway.
Al-Mualim is a house of cards compared to Robert de Sable.
Anyway, but the game goes so far with Richard, kind of the thought I was having there, is that they go so far as to completely transfer all the blame for the massacre of civilians in Acre to William of Montferrat, our 5th assassination target.
Oh yeah, they really make him into a heel, don't they? I remember that.
Yeah, the thing is, it is definitively beyond question that Richard the Lionheart is the one who ordered the execution of those civilians. Without a doubt. Negotiations with Salah al-Din for the exchange of prisoners fell through, and so Richard just ordered the murder of a lot of civilians.
I also think, speaking of Saladin, I think it is, on the one hand, I'm like, it's a really missed opportunity that we didn't get to interact with him, but on the other hand, they would have messed it up real bad, so probably not the best.
I know, I am definitely surprised. Oh, let's get him, come on. Yeah! Grabs are overpowered. Ow. Ow, please.
Because that's one of the things that, you know, every time I look into the history of the Crusades, which I don't often do for personal reasons, namely my sanity, I often find that there's so much just overflowing respect for Saladin, because he was just such a cool dude and so good at the stuff, and just like noble and cool and smart and like perfect. But then it's like, oh, but he wasn't Christian, so he's bad. It's like, no.
But also, let's be clear. His main 2 biographies, one of which was written by one of the people he assassinated, Baha al-Din ibn Shaddad, who becomes Al-Majdin, or Majd ad-Din in the game, are both personal friends of his, and so they kind of really like him. Some of the Egyptian sources are a little more ambivalent about Salah al-Din, and the fact that he maybe went a little bit too far on the whole generosity thing and forgot to leave his royal treasury intact for his heirs.
But he is not a Templar.
Oh, oops.
Yeah, his empire immediately collapses because he left it dead broke and split it up amongst his sons, and they immediately fall to infighting because none of them had money.
I honestly, like, I know benefit of hindsight, but like, how centuries of history went by with people still thinking that dividing a kingdom between your sons was a good idea. How on earth that happened? We saw it go to hell in Rome. We saw it go to hell in Carolingian France. We're seeing it go to hell here.
They didn't do that for the Sasanians, and it still went to hell because all the kids who got shafted weren't happy about that.
That I, your greatest enemy.
So
true. You know that's fair. Here I am trying to have opinions, but can y'all tell this isn't my field? I studied classics.
Also, though, like anything you do in history, anytime you go, this is universally a bad idea. History has someone tried the exact opposite, and it also went badly.
No, that's entirely fair. Just because I say, you know, oh, dividing an empire between your sons is bad, does not mean that dividing an empire any other way is not bad.
Or that not dividing your empire manages to work.
is good. Yeah, exactly. So an important distinction to remember is just because like someone can claim thing bad with 3 points of evidence, in my case, Rome, Carolingian France, and Saladin's empire, it doesn't mean that the converse is true. So
exactly.
Use my casual fuck up as a lesson in the importance of self-examination and accurate logic.
Our lesson here is that empire is a mistake, and just don't do an imperialism.
I think he'd like to see an end to this war as much as
don't do imperialism, kids.
Even if he doesn't say it.
I would have also really liked to see Salah al-Din in this game, because it's sad. It's kind of revealing of spoilers for kind of the problems. We'll visit Acre and Damascus. I think we won't worry so much about Jerusalem for the sake of time, but it's indicative of the problem we have of they do the Christian characters in the game a lot better than they do the Islamic characters in the game.
There's no trick to be found here.
And And I will say, even like the Templar, our atheistic Templars, who are all the guys we kill, we got our Christian characters, we got our Muslim characters, we've got Crusaders, and we've got Ayyubids. And pretending otherwise is kind of nonsense. So I'm just going to refer to them as that for convenience. I may say like Frankish and Ayyubid instead. But ultimately, yeah, it's two very different sets of problems. I have problems with the portrayal of both of them. There are very different problems.
Yes, that's valid. One of the things actually, and this is a slight tangent, but one of the things that confused me about the Crusaders for the longest time was that a lot of them are speaking English, a lot of them are speaking French, and they talk about like King, Richard the Lionheart, like of England, and it took me until like last year to realize that there was a period in history at about the Third Crusade when England and France were under the same umbrella.
They were the same
and that
umbrella.
changed a lot of things for me.
Yep.
I was like, oh, Angevin, that's a thing. Okay, that answers a lot of questions. Because I was like, why are these French people working for England?
Because he was the king of, he was the Duke of Aquitaine and Anjou and Normandy.
Look, I don't know what you're talking
He will own like 2/3 of France.
It's got nothing to do with me.
There's a reason I steer clear of this period in history for solely the reason that keeping track of what state is what state and what state is not what other state is very difficult for me. I'm a classicist. I like when cities are their own states and empires are their own empires. I have a real hard time with like the hierarchical system of like kings and lords and dukes, and like the Duke of Normandy is the king of England, so the Duke of Normandy is subservient to the king of France, so that means the king of England is subservient. What?
Hence the 100 Years' War.
I have a real hard time with that kind of nonsense, and that's why I.
Fair. No, I try and avoid political history because it's silly. But anyway,
honestly,
we're going to pause Nolan North's luxurious voice for a moment, because if you have been enjoying it so far, it actually just paused the video. Interesting. So we will let them finish talking with the meta plot, but then before we talk about the Assassin's Creed meta plot, I've got a little bit of a blurb to give. Oh good, you're done. Okay, so if you have been enjoying it so far, please do consider throwing a follow to the channel and subscribing both here on Twitch and on YouTube. Links are in the About section of the stream, and join the Discord server to do that. So, if you have Twitch Prime, you can subscribe for a grand total of $0.00, so totally free, and I get paid exactly the same. It's a screaming deal. And subscribing gives us new emotes. We're currently at 12 subscribers, but subscribers will get to vote on the new emotes. So you might choose one of the faces from this very gleeful horse, or his somewhat less gleeful rider. It's actually Pippin, the son of Charlemagne, who did not become all of the things.
Pippin the
but
Fat?
He got a very fine horse, and his horse is a little bit too cheerful and has very short legs. Or you might get the Virgin Mary punching the devil in the face. Or
nice.
You could have this cat. I think it's a cat. It's supposed to be a cat. Just its face plastered all over your Twitch. All over your Twitch. Just think about it. It's perfect. So, subscribers get to vote on who it is, and so we've already gotten a few subscribers, so thank you to Sagira98 and Brother Jeremiah for the subscriptions, and everyone else. I so appreciate the follows and subscriptions on YouTube. There will be YouTube-specific content soon. There's one video right there now that is not just a VOD, but we will be adding more content there, so make sure you subscribe, join the Discord. Links to all the things are in the About section of the stream. Anyway, we're going to hide them again. Go away, go away, go away, horse. So, and get back into the game.
Point about the difficulties of medieval history. I was looking up like, oh, which
Rest up, Mr.
Pepin
Miles.
was that? So I looked
Tomorrow,
up like Pepin the
we
Short,
finish
which was like the one Pepin that I'm familiar with previously. And I was like, oh no, that's Charlemagne's dad. That's not his son. And then I looked up Charlemagne's kids, and he has 2 kids named Pepin.
Yes.
I hate that.
Yes, it is pretty tragic.
hate
I
that.
won't lie.
Like what disaster did like Western European languages
You mentioned the
go
desert.
through that resulted in us having
They
like
sent a team there, but the
15
place was
names
deserted.
for men? Like
I
what
don't know
the
where your
hell,
parents are.
guys?
Yes.
Can't promise they're
Yeah.
still alive.
It's the
They-
same 15
But I think they
freaking
got away.
names.
Oh god, remember, I do Icelandic history.
Thanks for checking.
It's not as bad as it seems.
What are you
I
talking about?
it is
killed-
we have 5
literally
names,
killed
and
all the
everyone
only
is
chance
the
of getting out
son
of here.
of one of
Then
the
I
other
find out
5
the
names.
assassins are all but destroyed, and Christ,
Yeah.
I still don't know what these
It
people
is
are planning.
frickin'
But I do know
tragic.
They plan to kill me when they're done. I am screwed. Okay?
So,
what do you want?
yeah,
me to do?
so
Just try and have
Lord
a little
Norgem,
faith.
you ask how many Snorris, but Snorri's father is the better example. Sturtla, from Sturtla. So his
Rest up,
sons
Desmond.
are
You're
not
gonna
all
need
named
energy.
the same thing, but then that means Snorri, both of Snorri's brothers named their eldest son, or sorry, name one of their sons at least, after their dad. So you have Sturtla, and then you have the Sturtla sons, and then you have another set of Sturtlas, and
Oh no.
it's actually pretty tragic. Anyway, metaplot.
messy.
So, metaplot, the assassins got more or less destroyed. Whoops. I feel like the later
One of the
they have
things
had to
that
retcon the
I
metaplot very hard.
stumbled onto, accidentally was in looking up some stuff for AC Valhalla. I learned that depending on the sex of the character, whether you play as male or female Eivor, it would change their name to Eivor Varin's son or Eivor Varin's daughter, and I'm like, oh god, it changes the names too. It's so finicky.
Uh-huh. But, you know, as it should, because there is no such thing as a
Uh-oh,
surname
Adam, have I
in
lost
Old
you?
Norse. But yeah, it's... Anyway,
I can't
we are
hear
actually
you at
going to
all.
do the metaplot.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm gonna leave the call and come back.
Oh no. Technical difficulties.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. I will leave the call and then come back. So,
I cannot hear you. I am listening on to the stream, so
shiny. So, let's try that.
I can hear you now.
Huzzah,
Sorry
it was
about
a
that,
me
that was
problem.
weird. I realized I must have just been fully talking over you for a
No,
second.
no,
there,
you
'cause
actually
I
weren't talking
couldn't
me
hear a
over.
damn thing.
You weren't talking over me at all. It actually worked shockingly well. It took a long time to notice that there
Fascinating.
was a problem. Anyway, I'm actually like doing the metaplot of Assassin's Creed 1. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing in this room, but I'm supposed to be doing something in this room. I know I am. Oh, yeah, there's a
can you
laptop
turn on
here.
Yeah.
Laptops.
I remember
Reading
one time
emails.
I realized that, yeah, prime gameplay. I remember that one time you have to pickpocket Warren Vidick's pen in like sequence 4, but if you miss it, you have to like play the game again to get it. I was like, ah.
Yup.
Back when the modern day was like interesting and cool, and then after Assassin's Creed Revelations, it's like, oh no, this is just dumb and
Exactly.
bad, and you ran out of ideas. I
Yeah.
recognize that you set up a game to be a trilogy, and then made some choices to make it not a trilogy because AC2 sold really freaking well. But now, look at where
Yup.
we're at.
I know, it's pretty tragic. So,
No
anyway.
spoilers, but the modern day of Valhalla is dumb. Anyway,
I've only had one modern day section, and it was like 90% reading emails.
yeah. It
And
gets
then
worse.
listening to a far more interesting character than Layla talk in an audio recording.
No, it gets worse.
Not that I
Anyway.
think, yeah, I'm sure it does. Not that I think Desmond is the most interesting character, but my god, does Layla make him look like it.
Yeah. Just being Nolan North gives you a leg up.
Exactly. Just another bit of pro advice. Don't do imperialism and be Nolan North.
Be Nolan North. I honestly, the first time that I played Uncharted, I was like, wait a minute, that's Desmond Miles. And For a second, I'm like, you're not allowed to be two different characters. Before I realized how acting works.
Incredible.
But anyway.
So I'm not even sure what the heck is supposed to be happening here, but
Oh,
the
nothing
Tunguska
important.
incident was apparently a problem. And the Holy
Yeah,
Grail.
that they made that a piece of Eden in Assassin's Creed: The Fall, which is cool. It was a Russian Revolution storyline, which would make a great time point for a game, but Ubisoft are cowards, so they haven't done it yet.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean they can't, but they haven't yet, and they should have.
Yep. So at this point, they have not gotten full nonsense. Where the meta plot, as I understand it, the first part of it. I will not summarize the whole thing, unless if you will do channel points on the Assassin's Creed Valhalla stream on Saturday. But like we haven't gotten any of the nonsense of the Isu and them actually being like all the gods who did remotely anything important. It's just there's a lot of powerful artifacts of unknown origin that are doing stuff and may or may not be divine.
Yeah. Yeah, to the question from Person Man, were the Greek gods in Odyssey just a bunch of those who came before? Yes, they were.
Yep.
They,
As are the Norse gods.
Yeah, in AC2, they hitched their horse to the Roman gods, and then they just kind of ran with it.
Yeah.
And then it gets bad, and they have to really do some gymnastics to make it work. And like, look, they're trying. They wrote themselves into a corner in game 3, and they took them like 6 more games to write themselves out of it. But
yeah, they had to
ooh,
almost
boy,
totally
there's,
abandon the meta
there's some
plot
real
for like
weirdness.
3 games to get themselves out of it.
Yeah. 3 whole games, yeah.
Because like, is there
it
even a meta
is
plot in
weird,
Unity and
quickly, and
Syndicate?
bad.
If you say so.
In Syndicate, barely. In Unity, fully no.
Yeah, so they just straight up abandoned it for 2 games in order to give themselves enough time to figure out a way out.
Yeah, and that was after they softly abandoned it for 4 and Rogue, where it's like, we don't know what to do with this, like, Apocalypse Desmond stuff. You're gonna be a Ubisoft employee for 2 games.
Exactly. No, they're being very careful to never say that a monotheistic god is in Isu. They've been unbelievably careful to say that the Bible and the Quran are both big, massive works of deception that trick people into thinking that there is a singular god. That's not better, but it sure is something.
Yeah, it's one of the fundamental problems is when you try to insert a extra ordinary world building like scaffolding on top of real history, because there is historical fiction, there is historical fantasy, which the Assassin's Creed games, as time goes on, veers much further into, and then there is, just full-on fantasy. And when you take a historical setting that deals with things such as religion, which is very near and dear to very many people, you have a very difficult time getting into tap dancing of like, oh, well, these gods are part of our world-building game, so we can just reduce the Greek pantheon to characters in our video game, but the god for the Abrahamic peeps, we're just not going to touch that. We're just going to leave that one be. So you end up getting into very interesting questions of which parts of world religion and history you're willing to play around with, and which ones you just want to leave alone. I think they definitely avoided some of the correct choices to avoid, but then they really ended up doing Greek mythology and Norse mythology dirty by basically saying, yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
Same. So they,
Yep, I'm actually going to reload Memory Block 5 here, because I'm not actually allowed to do something in Memory Block 7.
Oh, that's right.
I'm not actually allowed to, leave Masyaf. So,
that sucks.
we're going to reload Memory Block 5 to talk about Acre and Damascus quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I can just back out, and it's fine. It's not a big deal.
Exactly. This is one feature I genuinely miss. Talking about game design for a second, I like being able to reload a memory sequence. In all the other games, you can replay individual missions, but you can't reload a sequence. So you like jump into a mission, and then you jump out, and it's like, oh, well, that's kind of eh. So like playing through one individual mission is dumb and not really very fun. But playing through a whole sequence is like, oh yeah, that's like you get to play the parts of the game that you like. So this was a good piece of design that I wish they brought back was playing full sequences.
Yeah, I really wish they would have too, because I don't know. Well, this game has a lot of problems and a lot of weird. I do think they have a really interesting structure, and I think they use that fairly well to actually like try and make an argument by having you go to each of the cities 3 times. It overstays its welcome, but at least it tries to do something interesting, and some parts of it are actually good.
Why is that?
Their plans depend upon the Templar treasure.
And we're just gonna listen to Al-Mualim wax philosophical, so
They cannot hope to achieve
shoutouts to this very nice looking castle
What is this treasure?
with
Yeah,
vaulted ceilings,
one thing
a
I
little bit
realized,
gothic looking, a little bit Romanesque.
When I was playing Assassin's Creed Revelations
What am I supposed to see?
a couple months ago, before Valhalla came out, at the beginning when you play that's near Masyaf, I looked at the castle and I'm like, how tall is this stupid castle that's already on a mountain? Why did they build it this high? It's silly, but it's fun.
Yep.
Seems rather plain
But
for
it's
all the
dumb.
power in the past.
Yep. So actually, let's talk about Al-Mualim while he's talking,
demands the hearts and
'cause,
minds of whoever looks upon it.
he is actually based on a historical figure.
Then Gagne's men.
It's Rashid. Crap, what's his name? Rashid al-Din.
To be ready for when they held it.
Talel supplied
Rashid.
them. Tamir equipped them.
Yep.
were preparing for
Rashad ad-Din Sinan.
But what?
Is our actual historical
The others. The men who ruled
guy
the
here.
cities.
He dies in
Make them
1193,
Make them
so
like Gagne's men.
he is actually based on a real dude who is the head of the Hashashin in Masyaf at the time of the Third Crusade, and is also stone fucking cold.
They will try.
Then they must be destroyed.
He got the name the Old Man of the Mountain for supposedly being totally indestructible, and like he stared down both multiple Crusader armies and Salah al-Din's army, and just rolled with it.
Visit with the bureau leaders. They'll instruct you.
Yeah, that's
further.
pretty cool. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah.
Quick about it.
So
No doubt Robert de Sable
the one of the most famous ones is in 1187. Salah al-Din actually, after nearly an assassin sneaks into his
They won't
tent and leaves a knife and a letter as proof that he could have just killed Salah al-Din there. Salah al-Din takes this kind of badly and goes and attacks Masyaf and besieges the city. Supposedly, the siege is broken when 2 of Salah al-Din's closest bodyguards are revealed to be faithful, i.e. Hashashin themselves.
Ooh.
And it's just like, yeah, by the way, we totally just could have murdered you anytime we wanted. Maybe you want to call off the siege and instead ally with us. And so yeah, kind of the narrative here of, you know, at Arsuf, Robert de Sable will unite everyone against the Hashashin, and Masyaf will be besieged. Actually kind of nonsense, because as it turns out, not how that works, because there was already an alliance in place, and you can't just break those, but it goes poorly if you just break those.
Yeah. That's the thing, is like there are a lot of things in history where it seems like people can just kind of do whatever they want, and like verbal oaths mean nothing, and to a degree, you know, the mechanisms for enforcing those things were not necessarily very strong, but the moral and in some cases their like religious weight of swearing an oath, you had to really weasel your way out of it. You couldn't just break it because you felt like it. So there are a lot of cases of like, you know, oaths and alliances being broken, but had to be for a reason, even if you had to get your lawyer in there to kind of finagle the details so that, oh, technically I'm no longer bound
Exactly.
to you by honor because you did this thing that's not okay, so that way I'm so I can kill you now.
Exactly.
But
Or worst case, just appoint your own pope and they'll tell you it's fine.
yeah.
Worst case scenario.
Anti-pope. Anti-pope.
Anti-pope. So yeah, we're in Damascus now. I just kind of warped over there because we don't have to ride through the kingdom and deal... I think we will ride through the kingdom a little bit, just to kind of hang out and see it, but mostly to kind of just look around this city. So,
Blazeburn Blade says, who was the dude who sat at the gates of a city as an enemy army rode up and just played his loot and the army ran away?
that is
Shige
from
Liang.
China.
Yeah, from China. War of
yeah.
the Three Kingdoms.
Exactly. Total badass. Also completely nuts.
Yeah.
As with most guys,
objectively.
both a genius and also crazy.
Yeah, you have to be crazy to be that kind of genius, or to conceive of that plan, you have to be genius, but to pull it off, you have to be crazy.
So the reason why they ran away is that he seemed so unconcerned that they figured he must have had a massive freaking army behind those walls and was well stocked for a siege. Neither of these things were true.
Neither were true. It's the kind of tactic you can only pull once.
Yeah. It's rough. Anyway, so we're in Damascus. There were 3 assassination targets in Damascus, all of them related to Salah al-Din and his whole business. I'm trying to run to somewhere specific. Where am I in the rich district? Somewhere around here. Right? No, I started in the rich district of Damascus. No. I started in the poor
Which
district.
one's the bureau? Yeah,
the
I
bureau's
think
in the
every
poor
time we start
district.
in the poor
So
district,
I
yeah.
need to go into the rich district next because I want to get to our like middle assassination target's palace.
Would that not be? Oh yeah, sorry, never mind.
I don't remember his name. I really
really
should look up their names. Give me a moment. Because I remember most of them, but not this guy because he's totally fictional.
Is this one not Majduddin?
No. Majduddin is the second Jerusalem one.
Oh, he's Jerusalem. He's Jerusalem. Oh, who the hell was this guy? Wait, hold on.
Dory. Who are our targets? Abul Nuqad.
Abu Nukud, yeah.
Yeah. Oh crap. I bumped into a guy and now the game crashed. I bumped into a guy and the game crashed, so we're gonna try that again. 10 out of 10. Well programmed. But anyway, we can talk about it while it's reloading. It won't take long. So our 5 Ayyubid, which is the dynasty that Salah al-Din kind of founds, so I'm just going to use that as our term. Our 5 Ayyubid targets are an arms dealer, a slaver, a horrifyingly egregiously or hedonistic merchant who is overweight and doesn't wear clothes good. Oh, if it reloads me to an annoying... It is going to do an annoying thing, isn't it? We might have to listen to more dialogue.
Sequence 7.
We might have to listen to more dialogue in sequence 5. Yep, we gotta listen to more dialogue. So
That's
fun.
Okay. We can just.
Yep. You wanted to hear it again, right? Just in case.
Yeah.
It happens.
Great Assassin's Creed 1 rating.
Exactly. Actually, I really do like some of the writing when it just is being philosophical.
I trust you're well
Oh yeah, no, that's the best part.
It's actually good, and it almost manages to be nuanced sometimes, and I'm proud of it. Anyway, so yeah, Abu Nukud, and then Majduddin, and then Ibn Jubayr. So we have an arms dealer, a slaver, a hedonistic merchant with a literal pleasure palace where wine flows from fountains.
Until it's poison.
A tyrant who executes people for absolute funsies.
Oh yeah. That's
And someone who wants to burn literally all the knowledge in the city.
To claim their cities in the Templar name.
Yep.
That the Templars themselves might
It's
rule
very clear that this is a post 9/11 game. Because the fact that your first target is an arms dealer
Their plans depend upon the
is
temperature.
pretty much
The peace
21st century
But we
peak.
hold it now, and they cannot hope to achieve their
Uh,
goals without it.
So,
What is this
well,
It is
while there was an arms trade, certainly trade in production and moving of weaponry, and the Templars actually get accused of making deals for weapons with post-Ayyubid Islamic forces, Turkic forces, and then up until the Mongols, at which point they get kicked out of the Levant.
Eris used it to start
And
the Trojan War.
slave trade
With
did
his
happen,
carpenter turned
but
water into wine.
oh my god, it is so clear that this is a mix of post 9/11 stereotypes about the Middle East and of 19th century Orientalist stereotypes about the Middle East.
Then Gagne's men?
Yeah.
An
It's
experiment.
it's rough.
Herbs used to simulate
Yeah.
its effects.
Orientalism came into fashion in the late 1800s, correct? Because
Yeah.
it was sort of like a casual justification for, oh, look at how icky and gross the Ottomans are. That's why we should go colonize all these places instead. Yeah, no, I definitely can see those undertones creeping through. And like obviously, you know, in the marketing of the game, it's like, oh, it's not a one-sided thing. You know, you're fighting both sides. You're killing Crusaders and you're killing Ayyubids. But like, yeah, one of them comes off a lot better than the other half.
Yeah.
Even if, you know, I'm trying to think of the Crusader targets. There's
Gagne de Nasrud.
Plus, the crazy
Yep.
doctor, the crazy captain, Sibrand.
There's William of Montferrat, there's
Montferrat.
Sibrand, and there's Robert de Sable.
No doubt
Oh,
Robert
just up.
Sabis
Yeah.
was nervous by our
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
success.
that, I mean,
His
they're
remaining followers will do
not
their
super
best
great
to
either.
They don't come off morally better,
The man
but
who they could.
they are using a very different language of tropes, and they manage to be bizarre in a different way.
Yeah.
Here,
Uh,
my gift
here,
Yeah,
and
they're not filling
gratitude for the
archetypes. The
good work
characters are the ones that are more crazy, and they're not like rooted as deeply in tropes of how Europeans act. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
absolutely.
Yeah.
They're very much based in, well, the Ayyubid targets are very much engaged in perceptions of how Islamic people act and do. And it's yikes. There was a question, though, Fredward actually asked, what is Orientalism? So Orientalism is an idea that emerged, or I guess I should say, really kind of emerges as a critical term with a little bit with like Said's work, Edward Said's work, but ultimately describes this idea or perception in Western Europe about how the Ottoman Empire looked and acted and did. And it is, by and large, an exotic place and a very hedonistic place, or perceived of as exotic and hedonistic, and by and large, a place of sex and debauchery and the opposite of good Victorian morals, which the Victorians are horrified by, but also secretly think is extremely cool.
And
This
the
has-
French too. They,
Yeah, and
they
the
were
French.
also a huge part of that push because they
Yes.
like all of North Africa went to France
Yep.
except for Egypt.
And so it is ultimately colonizers taking a look at the social structures of the places they colonized and going like, these are all super weird and therefore it must be sex and debauchery instead of, you know, actually engaging with it in meaningful terms. And so, like, the idea of the harem as just this perpetual pleasure palace where the Sultan gets to have sex with literally anyone all the time and has like 300 quote-unquote wives is an Orientalist trope. And
Yeah.
if I can get around to the pleasure palace of who's his face, Abul Nukud, we'll see the same. I'll tell the same idea of like this interior space of an Islamic house being this hedonistic pleasure palace that violates a whole bunch of rules of, you know, Islamic art and what
Yeah.
is allowable depictions of anything.
Yeah.
Because
Such as depictions.
depictions of the human body, much less naked female human bodies.
Yeah.
It is. Oof.
Yeah, one thing that I I lost my train of thought is what I did.
Happens to me all the time.
One of the comments, that's what it was. Brother Jeremiah says, following that narrative, I'm surprised we don't see much of Crusades being like we were fighting a defensive war. Funny you should say that. That's actually what a lot of the narratives are, especially if you look in modern circles with various political groups, usually of the right-wing variety, talking about the Crusades. You will often see comparisons of like, oh, well, we were fighting for like one piece of land that was really special to us, but like, look at the Muslim conquest. Look at how much they did. They're the religion of war. They spread through. So you actually do see a very strong narrative of the Crusades being a defensive war, or a sort of like
It's
delayed response, or it's like the
Luckily,
wording of the
we don't
proclamation
see
of the First
that
Crusade is
here.
like, we need to get back this land that was taken over 500 years of you know, like Muslim invasion. We need to go get it. That's in the proclamation of the First Crusade. So, you know, it mercifully is not really depicted in this game, because there are a lot of problems with it. But that is actually a very common line of either defense or attack, depending on what point you're trying to sell.
I think he was trying to say, like, specifically, like, in... Ow. Hey, don't do that. I think he was trying to say, like, in Assassin's Creed specifically, we don't see that, thankfully.
Fair.
Where we really don't. Which is lucky, because there's plenty of room for the Templars to have made that argument, but they choose not to, and it is for the best. Anyway, I don't know if I'm actually climbing up the right building. I may be climbing up the Great Mosque
I think
instead.
you need to go across, yeah.
Yeah, this is the Great Umayyad Mosque, which is one of like the central buildings.
Yeah, God, it's gorgeous.
It is. Oh, here it is. It's way out here in the corner.
Yeah.
We're getting closer though. We were heading in the right direction, but this is something this building is something I wanted to talk about with these games, because having now complained about the characters, we can talk about the city. And the fact that one thing that struck out to me while I was playing the rest of it is the fact that while the cities are aesthetically somewhat different, in a very meaningful sense, structurally they are precisely the same, at least Acre and Jerusalem are. So, you've got the Great Umayyad Mosque, and then you have the cathedral in Acre. And they're in slightly different spots, but ultimately they are the same thing of really tall building with spire.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because this is, especially at the time of the Third Crusade, this is a strip of land on the Levant that has been back and forth between the same couple people for a few hundred years.
A long time,
so a lot of the original cities were built on, Byzantine city plans, and, old temples are replaced with churches or converted or what have you. And then when the Muslim conquests come out from Arabia and go in pretty much every direction, a lot of the cities were simply repurposed, because why would you go,
And I drowned. Nope, I
wasting perfect.
almost drowned.
In a lot of cases, new cities were built. I think Damascus was a brand new one, but like Jerusalem was, continuity for hundreds of years, thousands of years at that point. No,
I don't remember if Damascus is brand new, but certainly it hits new prominence. I think the site is a lot older, but the Umayyads really kind of bring it up to premier. I mean, it was their capital. It was the capital of like the first half dozen Umayyad caliphs, and it's rad. That city, the city is awesome. The city in Assassin's Creed here has literally no relationship to the layout of the historical city. It looks nothing like it. But yeah, by the way, as it turns out, that is not a legally allowed depiction in Islamic art. The depiction of the human body is varies between strongly discouraged and actually forbidden. Depending on which kind of is ruling dynasty we're talking about. The Umayyads are a little bit stricter on that. The Abbasids are a little less strict. But yeah, in either case, that is a very much look at this idea of, the interior of these palaces must be luxuriously decorated and follow pouring water in a very, Roman sculpture architectural style with
Yeah.
contrapposto, and fits
Yeah, exactly.
very early modern ideas of what classical artsy sculpture should look like.
Yeah, this I am not an expert in medieval Muslim palace design, but this does not strike me as true to form for for Ayyubid architecture.
Yeah, literally the only part of this that is right is that we've got at least 2 layers, and that it looks into a central courtyard.
Yeah.
That is extremely correct for a madrasa, which I think is what this is supposed to be. Actually supposed to be a school. No, it's Ibn Jubair's that's a school. This is a different one. But, yeah, it is
Yeah.
very much...
Yeah, it's
Not
they take
only
some liberties, and obviously
superficially.
they're trying to make
Superficially
a
related.
playground for the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's they do a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to just be purely negative, because there are a lot of things that they do get right, and those are worth highlighting. But right now we're kind of bumping into a lot of the things that are wacky, bordering on
Yeah.
problematic, depending on how deeply you elect to read into it. And
Exactly.
again, not as like objectively nonsense as some of the things they pull in Valhalla, but still like worth unpacking nuance that is worth having a discussion about.
Yeah. One thing I really like, these indoor souks or markets. They're not crowded
Yeah,
enough.
yeah.
There's not enough stuff going on. But in terms of the variety of things you can see, vegetable stall, fish stall, carpet stall next to it, live animal market right there. There's no dessert stands. There does need to be more dessert stands, but people just kind of gathered around chatting.
Yeah.
Looks like a clothing stall or cushions there next to another butcher or fishmonger. Something like this is actually a really good... it's a fairly superficial representation, but they managed to make it both fun in game because there are these big, long kind of parkour
Oh yeah. it's
structures. That is like one of the few places where parkour definitely works as intended in this game. Because you can just run over the
Yeah.
top of the entire souk. And it just works. So it manages to be fun in game while still representing a very stereotypically and just really kind of delightfully Islamic structure and cultural landmark.
Yeah. No, this is one of my favorite parts of the game. One of the reasons that I also love for similar purposes, similar structures, the Grand Bazaar in Revelations is just so full of life and so exciting and sprawling and cool. It's like, oh, we have our shopping malls are dumb. Why can't we have this?
Exactly. I will stand the idea that souks are a massive improvement over shopping malls, and once you've experienced a souk in all of its glory, you'll never want to go into a shopping mall again. They're
You
so
haven't
dead.
lived until you've gone rug shopping in the Grand Bazaar, and I recognize that's one of the most pretentious things I've ever said in my life, and ever will say in my life. But oh my god, it's so
Okay,
much fun.
but you can do like Old Town Fez and get away with the same thing, or Marrakesh's.
Oh yeah, totally.
Marrakesh's whole markets, though. Fair warning: if you ever go to Morocco, the snake charmers will fling the snakes at you, and then they will charge you money for the privilege of having had a snake flung at you.
Yeah.
So
Let me rephrase. You haven't lived until you've gone rug shopping in a bazaar.
Yes.
let me broaden it.
Uh-huh.
I have just been to Turkey, which was a fun experience. I don't want to get too off topic. Lord Norgem says, "What is the most historically accurate AC game? Historically accurate with a TM behind it." So hanging a little bit of a lampshade on it, recognizing that obviously nothing is perfect. Do you have any thoughts on this? Because I have some thoughts on this.
I mean, the easy answer is probably 2.
Yeah, that is the
That is the easy answer. I will admit my kind of limitations and say I've only fully played 1, 2, and Black Flag all the way through. I've played most of Revelations, and I'm about a third of the way through Valhalla now. So, that being said, I'm also going to go out on a weird limb and kind of say Syndicate.
Yes, no, that's totally fair.
That is the slightly less easy take than 2, but I think is still a pretty justifiable take, just because we have such good documentation for, the Victorian era. They tried really hard to avoid saying the British Empire bad, or avoid engaging with any of the contemporary critiques about it. But in terms of historically accurate as a fairly superficial thing, I think Syndicate does a really good job of capturing the feel of the chaos of 19th century London.
Yeah.
And just how much stuff was going on.
Yeah, on strictly like on paper at face value, Syndicate is the best simulation of a historical period. I think there are some more liberties that are taken with 2 and Brotherhood, for instance. Syndicate definitely is like most true to life one. I would throw my hat in for 2. Granted, my biases, I like it a lot. It's basically the game that got me into history. But having now spent a lot of time researching that period in time, I can say that they get a lot of things very deeply accurately right, to the point where there are lines of dialogue between historical characters in the game that I only learned years and years and years later that are lifted from actual sources.
Yeah.
So a lot of the events surrounding the Patsy conspiracy in Florence, just for instance, very early in the game, the discussion that was happening leading up to the planning process is all accurate. They had to delay the assassination because they wanted to kill Giuliano and Lorenzo in their house, but they had to do it at church, and then a bunch of the people backed out, and it was a whole big thing. And when they're actually like going through the murder, the quotes of what Francesco de Pazzi said to Giuliano as he was killing him was like, those are lifted quotes. That's insane. So there's a lot of like those kinds of things that are really cool and really accurate. The worlds themselves are done pretty damn well. It's the case where I will give it a bit of a pass because there are some aspects of the city design that were brought in later. So, for instance, the churches that you see in the game are presented a little bit more complete than they would have been at the time, because Santa Maria Novella would have been the only main church in Florence that had a face on it. Santa Croce would have been unfaced. The Duomo would have been unfaced. They show that one under construction, which is a really cool detail to kind of like cheat a little bit, skirt the line, not lie to you and say like, oh, look, it was finished, but like show like, oh, this building was a work in progress and hint at what it ends up being, but still holding back. And there are a lot of other things that they do, large and small, to kind of sell the realism of the world, how the characters act, the kinds of things Da Vinci was getting into, where he was kind of bouncing between cities and always on the run and couldn't super hold down a job in one place for very long.
Yep.
And obviously they take liberties with the flying machine, which never would have worked, and yada yada yada. But overall, I think with 2, they did a lot of things really deeply right in a way that wasn't just accurate to the game world and being a simulation of Renaissance Florence, but showing what life would have been like and what the types of situations these characters would have found themselves in. And I think they did a real nice job of that.
Yeah.
So,
One thing
answer,
that you said that
good.
kind of interests me with AC1, actually the leap of faith is coming from a probably apocryphal story of Rashid al-Din Sinan, where Masyaf was being besieged by a crusader army. And the leader of the army says, my army is stronger than yours. And he's like, oh yeah? You want to bet? And Rashid just tells one of his men to fling himself off the top of the castle. And he does. And that moment is beat for beat the beginning of the game, except, no big tumble of logs, but it is basically beat for beat the beginning of the game between Robert and Al-Mualim. So
Really
it's kind of the same moment of them actually. They do sometimes lift moments and lines from historical source material, and they do that as a kind of, I don't know, I guess referencing its own accuracy, without necessarily having to figure out the correct best way to do that.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I don't know, it's weird. Assassin's Creed 2 is the moment where a lot of Assassin's Creed's mainstays, what we think of as Assassin's Creed staples, show up. So, it is super duper I'm super excited to eventually get to that one. I will get to that one. It'll be after Valhalla and probably after I take a break from Assassin's Creed for a little bit after Valhalla, because
Smart.
that playthrough will be full or as long as my sanity lasts, whichever comes first.
I fully quit Valhalla partway through. I couldn't. I'm like, this game,
Yep.
oh god.
Yep.
I played through enough, but I do not have the patience to go through all 100 hours that story is asking of me.
Oh yeah, it is too long. It is too long, and even if the stories are reasonably well told, they really could have stripped an episode out of them and called it a day. Every single one could be one episode shorter, and we would lose nothing.
No, exactly. But like with 2, one of the things that I like is that the story is fairly tight, and a lot of the things that are going on in the world, aside from like the revenge quest, which is obviously like assassin-y, like superimposed onto the world, not historical, is the way in which the political forces of the city or the cities are operating, where, you know, in Florence they try to kill Lorenzo and they fail, so they go and book it to the woods in Tuscany, and Lorenzo's jurisdiction kind of ends. So his hands are basically tied because, like, well, it's not my city anymore. I can't really do anything about that.
Exactly.
All right. So it's like just those kinds of details are like, oh yeah, that would be a problem for someone in that scenario where you can like kind of go outside the law by just skipping town, and it was kind of easy as that.
This is why city-states are a mistake. City-states, empires are a mistake, but city-states are also a mistake.
Oh, I disagree. City-states are fun.
Anyway, I'm trying to get up to the cathedral here because you may have noticed we went and teleported to Acre.
Yep. Yeah, you can tell because it's gray and dreary.
You can tell because we're in the Dark Ages. We're in dark Europe. And they literally forgot to, like, put in a color palette.
Yeah. How much of the architecture of Acre is accurate to what would have been like peak medieval, and how much of it is just sensationalized nonsense?
Oh, it is solidly 14th, I'd say. I don't know, like by the time we get all these houses, we're into the 13th century, so it's just on the edge of possibility for the Third Crusade. But overall, like, this cathedral is based on one in France, which is finished just a little bit after the Third Crusade. So it's like within 50 years of the Third Crusade. But the city of Acre is not in Europe, as it turns out, and it was not built by 13th century Europeans. Spoilers. And so, you know, they imported a French cathedral for the sake of having a Gothic cathedral with this super dark stone in it. Now, this is not how a Gothic cathedral looks like in the 13th century. It's just not. Bright colors, bright paint, everywhere. Everything gets painted because that dark stone takes paint well. That's why they use that. It's the same reason why the Greeks and Romans used marble. It's a material that just, it doesn't distort the colors when you paint on it. And so, here we are, with a French Gothic cathedral inserted into Acre. It is unbelievably, like, who needs a color palette?
Yeah.
And it's referencing the Dark Ages. It just is.
Yeah,
it's clearly
one way
Dark
that I
Ages.
might describe it for people trying to get a better sense of it, and Adam, correct me if I'm off base here, but when you think of the inside of a church, imagine that same artistry and attention to detail and love of color and design also being applied to the outside.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have just been a monochrome slab of ruddy, muddy, dirty bricks.
Correct.
And stones and whatnot.
Yeah. And that goes true for, like, everything everyone is wearing. While some of the styles are not awful, they're not great. At no point is there a great style, but, like, this guy walking past right now is okay in that he's wearing a really long flowy thing. I want more sleeve. I want him to have more sleeves because we are in the rich district. And more, just waste more cloth in your clothing, please. But, I don't know, like, this guy here that's just wearing, like, a t-shirt and jeans,
Yeah.
with visible stitching. Not that ain't how you do it. Or the beggar. I mean, the literal beggar wearing the plain shift and then a very simple cap is probably fine. But there's a whole lot of people who aren't beggars who are wearing something distressingly similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they do some stuff okay, and then they... I really just wish they didn't have this gray filter over anything, because this was bright green,
Yeah.
and that was bright yellow, and this guy's wearing kind of like an orangey maroon, and these blues are a bit brighter. I would not have complaints, because it gets the feel of it. Unlike what we have now, where it's just kind of everything looks washed out.
Yeah.
And so it
everything
looks like they just
dirty and
forgot how to...
sad and-
Exactly, they forgot how to, like,
Exactly.
wash their clothes. Or themselves.
Exactly.
Medieval people knew how to wash themselves. And Ochre per year earned more money than the Kingdom of England did.
Yeah. It's
So-
so messed up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also would perhaps posit that with the exception of specific monuments found in like Florence and Venice, that a city like Acre would look a lot more like the cities in AC2 than what Acre looks like here in AC1.
Yes.
You know, it actually would have been a city that was built and not just a dirty pile of rubble.
Exactly.
Hi, Cleo. You want to say hi? You want to
Hi, Cleo.
Cleo's investigating the table here.
Perfect. Hello, Cleo. Okay, and so yeah, here, I guess. At this point, I also want to kind of point out the structural similarities between Damascus and Acre extend. While the aesthetic is very different, like the what you do in it, the way soldiers act in them, the people patrolling the roofs, the scholars, the civilians in trouble, literally everything, including having, you know, fully armored great 12th century Great Helm Templars just hanging out in all three cities, Acre, Damascus, and Jerusalem. Like, it's just a thing that exists. And so structurally, these cities are almost precisely the same.
Cleo, get out of there. Get out of there.
In a
It's
way that
someone's
is...
backpack.
Oh, Cleo.
She's investigating.
So, yeah, it's one of those cases where it feels like they're making a historical argument about kind of the fundamental similarity of both cultures, even though they were at war. Like, they are ultimately the same, they do the same, they have the same problems, and treating them as distinct instead of as a hybridization. It's like, it almost manages to be nuanced, but I'm not persuaded it actually manages to be nuanced.
It seems like an accidental nuance because it's not actively reinforced by the story or the mechanics. It's just a happenstance of game design.
It is a little bit reinforced by the story in that the Templars are literally on both sides. They are the evil, awful, total conspiracy, but they're everywhere. They're not the real enemy. There's no... both Salahuddin and Richard Coeur de Lion are kind of accidentally part of it.
I would venture that says more about the Templars than it says about the civilizations they are kind of interacting with. In this case, because I think the whole thing is like they're trying to sell the Templars as like, oh, it's like the Red Scare, except the Templars could be anyone on any side of the conflict, as opposed to like trying to make a nuanced argument about like, oh, you know, these are not two separate cultures butting up against each other. These were two cultures that had a surprising amount of overlap, except it's not surprising because they were interacting with each other.
They're
for
both heirs of
hundreds
Rome.
years.
Also, they're both heavily indebted culturally to Roman writing and Roman authors. It really shouldn't be surprising when the main, literally like the most important medical text in both of them is Galen.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be surprising that they're kind of similar.
Yeah, academically, you know, the classical texts that we can all appreciate today were preserved in basically one of three places. Ireland, Byzantine Empire, and just the entire Muslim world.
Yeah.
Because those guys loved them some classical authors to a ludicrous degree in comparison to what we see in central medieval Europe and in like France, Germany, yada yada yada. The amount of active participation and evolution of ideas proposed by Aristotle, Galen, whoever else, it was an active process of evolution, as opposed to some of what you saw. And again, I'm not trying to like overgeneralize, but a lot of the exploration of ideas was often filtered through the lens of theology, which is not to say that the church just dictated what was and wasn't okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but a lot of the work that was being done was in service to theology, whereas more often in the Muslim world you saw a kind of academic for academia's sake of like, oh, this is really cool, let's kind of dig into this and see what's going on, whereas in Central Europe you'd be more quick to be like, oh well, how does this help us with this one specific thing, and otherwise we can move along. I don't know if I'm being a little too overgeneralization here, but
yes, but also no, in that it takes a kind of restrictive view to theology, in that I would not say that Islamic scholarship is less theologically motivated, but in that they conceive of what is theology with a much, much, much broader lens. And
yes,
so you can do something in its own right, and that is in service to God and in praise of him, because you are learning about something in its own right. And you are therefore studying creation. And that's something that shows up in the High Middle Ages in Europe quite strongly. Shockingly, after like Aristotle gets reintroduced from Umayyad Spain, after Toledo gets sacked in 1080. You immediately see like Neo-Aristotelian and Neoplatonic movements show up that are really interested in creation as the study of creation and the study of geography and nature and natural philosophy as itself a form of doing theology. And so in the 14th century, like, you're seeing pretty well, the trajectories have changed slightly, with like Maimonides writing something a little bit different than what anyone in Europe would have, or in Christian Europe would have written. He was,
man.
For anyone who doesn't know, he was a 14th century Jewish scholar living in Cordova, in Spain, under the Nazareth dynasty. I think it's Nazareth at that point.
I couldn't tell you.
But the ruling dynasty, or the ruling group based in the remainder of Andalusian Muslim Spain. So actually, wait, was he in Cordova or was he in Granada? He was in one of the two. I can never remember. I visited those two one day apart, so I kind of can't remember.
Okay, yeah, he was born 1138 in Cordoba, died 1204 in Egypt. I don't think Granada was as strategically important of a place at that point.
They're a little bit later.
Like, still the center.
Yeah,
so you see, like, the political and cultural and economic center of Muslim Spain, like, steadily shifts south over the course of the Reconquista, obviously. But in Maimonides' day, Cordoba still would have been the place.
Yep. Anyway.
It's like Toledo, Cordoba, Seville, and then like finally Granada.
Yup. Anyway, I realized we totally forgot to talk about the Frankish, mostly, assassination targets. Sibrand is German, but we kind of forgot to talk about them and how hilariously nonsense they are. They're nonsense for like the completely opposite reason as the nonsense of the Ayyubid collective, because our targets are Garnier, who is the Grand Master of the Knights Hospitaller, William of Montferrat, one of Richard's, or a nobleman in the Kingdom of Jerusalem, who worked with Richard, but then also sometimes was not on good terms with him. And then Master Sibrandus, who is the Grandmaster of the Teutonic Knights. And then, obviously, Robert de Sablé, the Grandmaster of the Knights Templar. So in
Yeah,
other
this game
words,
definitely falls into the trap of knights are knights.
our Templars are, by and large, not members of the Order of the Temple, and 2 of them are direct rivals to the Order of the Temple.
Yeah.
Oof, quality pathfinding AC1.
Yeah.
Just fell off a cliff for no reason.
Yeah. It basically is like, oh, all of these organizations that had highly different motivations and operations. It's the same. Same.
Exactly, cause, like, ah, damn it. I thought I escaped that time. So we're talking while running. But the Knights Hospitaller and the Teutonic Order are both created as hospital orders. Sibrand actually, it's after arriving in the Holy Land in the Third Crusade after Barbarossa kind of drowns awkwardly. They decide that, maybe I should try and actually, like, heal people, and so he founds it's the Order of the Church of St. Mary, I believe, for Germans. Or it's like the German Church of St. Mary or something, is the Knight Teutonic. It gets codified as a military order in 1198, long after the events of the game. But ultimately, they kind of follow a similar trajectory. From going, let's heal people who are going on an armed pilgrimage, to let's escort pilgrims, to let's encourage pilgrims to do armed pilgrimage, i.e. crusade, to let's forcibly proselytize, i.e. do crusades, in order to get more pilgrims to care for, to do more armed pilgrimage for us to heal, i.e. do more crusades.
Yeah, you see they're really working on their business model. From the Wikipedia page, the Order of the Brothers of the German House of St. Mary in Jerusalem. So
thank you.
Exactly.
Well, the Knights Hospitaller are basically the same thing but French.
Yeah. And they are the precursors to the Knights of St. John, Knights of Malta.
Yes.
Who I
They're
talked about in my
also
Malta video.
really cool.
They're pretty cool.
The Knights Hospitaller are clearly the coolest of the military orders. Even though I am a Scandinavianist, screw the Teutonic Order. They ruined all the cool Baltic folklore. They just, like,
Oh, yeah.
they went and
did
forcibly
that.
converted, like, the entire Baltic via crusade. Because they leave the Holy Land shortly after 1198, and they never come back, because they realize they can get crusading bulls and get all the same brownie points by going to the much more strategically convenient Baltic. Instead of having to leave Germany, or go far away from Germany.
Yeah.
And so they end up actually competing with, like, the Hansa League later on. Because, they're kind of competing in the same area.
Yeah.
And so it's
real
completely
messy, doesn't
ridiculous. They're also a case of solidly not understanding what year it is. Because we killed Garnier de Naplouse before the Battle of Arsuf, in which he personally was incredibly critical for winning the Battle of Arsuf.
Oops.
Because he kind of, like, Hail Mary charged the Templar vanguard, or sorry, not the Templar, the Salahuddin's
Teutonic.
vanguard.
Oh, never mind.
The Templars traded off for most of the battle with the Knights Hospitaller for kind of how to do how to kind of navigate and not do terribly, and just taking a beating from Salahuddin's army. And then Garnier just kind of YOLO charges, and Richard follows, and it hits a weak point in the line. And Saladin's line Saladin's whole force collapses because of a YOLO charge. And if the guy who YOLO charges is dead, what happens to that battle?
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably in the like folder of it's the kind of detail you wouldn't notice unless you have prior experience in the
Exactly.
topic, which like is still like it's still a case of inaccuracy, but it's like compared to, painting Acre as this dark, dingy, gloomy, like, rubble pit is, like, that's definitely the more egregious portrayal at work here.
Oh, definitely.
No, it does end up being really, like, silly, I think would be the word I would use
Exactly.
to have, like, Garnier de la Plus just bite it before his big famous moment.
Also, though, William of Montferrat is not different. Firstly, he's about half the age in the game as he is historically when he dies. He's about 80 when he dies. And he dies of old age. But his son Conrad, who is mentioned in the game, is assassinated by the Hashashin. So, 10 out of 10 choices there. And it's been proposed that Richard actually commissions the Hashashin to go kill him. Because turns out there was a contested election for King of Jerusalem in 1193. And Richard's candidate was Guy de Lusignan, a noble directly loyal to him. And Conrad was aligned with Philip Augustus' choice, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And so, killing Conrad, who was the French king's most loyal agent in the Kingdom of Jerusalem, ensures that Richard's man gets the job.
Yeah.
So, it's been proposed that Richard hires the Hashashin to assassinate Conrad de Montferrat around the time of this game, and they chose to kill his dad instead.
Yeah. That's just tripping over your own shoelaces.
It is absolutely comically ridiculous.
Where is everyone?
And so, yeah, we have, the leader of the three military orders of the
What path?
Crusades.
What are you talking
The military holy orders are all ruled by atheists.
is only what the master shows us.
Yeah, that's pretty finicky, isn't it?
And they're all actually
A little
Templars.
silly.
It's
Yeah.
totally absurd. And, it's absurd in a way that is a problem, but it's such a different problem than what we see with the Islamic group or the Ayyubid assassination targets. It's totally unrelatedly different.
Yeah.
But I think it shows just what sources they had better access to, and while they did goofy things, they had access to generally a much better understanding, at least in theory, of the main figures in 1192. Instead of needing to basically just grab anyone whose name seemed vaguely relevant, or having to make up people.
Yeah. To that point, slant from that. I was thinking about one thing that I will give the newer Assassin's Creed games since Origins credit for. The idea of, you go back in time to before Assassin's Creed 1. You don't have Assassins, you don't have Templars, what are you going to do? They basically say, oh, so this time-spanning order that you are familiar with, or these two orders, is not the Assassins and Templars. It's the Hidden Ones and the Order of the Ancients. I think, obviously, they're solving a very simple problem of our main organizations are not there yet, but it is much more palatable historically to say, yeah, so the Order of the Ancients, they had their hands in the Assassin's pie, and they had their hands in the Templar pie, and the Hidden Ones, they actually went on to become the Assassins, as opposed to saying, yeah, the Templars, yeah, they went on to go control, the fucking economy of Victorian era England. So I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but I'm trying to highlight and celebrate the nuance of when you create a fictional organization and put them into the shoes of a real-world organization, it is a lot more palatable than saying, oh, this real-world organization also did all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So you're just separating them, and that's an important thing that I will give the newer games a lot of credit for, because it makes the storylines a lot easier. It detaches the kind of icky questions of so there are the Templars, the Templary historical ones, and then the game's idea of the Templars, and even though, there are the Assassin's Creed Templars who are running the other military orders, I think I'm making sense.
Yeah.
It's a lot you don't run into those problems when it's like, oh, that's just the Order of the Ancients wearing a cross for these 50 years right here. It's it ends up actually making the game a lot.
It's one retcon that I will totally agree with, even though it is such a retcon, because they explicitly say in this game that, like, this is the start of the conflict. Like, this is the beginning.
Yes, it is. It's
the
a
conflict
huge
that started in the Third Crusade never ended. But wait.
Yeah.
But it started in, like, 1200 BC. What are you talking about? Says Origins.
Yeah.
It's
or,
kind of
like 30
nonsense.
BC at that point. Yeah, no, it is kind of nonsense. But I think just in general, as a rule of like doing historical fiction and stuff, like we're talking about, oh, when you make, you know, real world religions and mythologies part of your spooky alien race, like that's iffy. That's a little messed up. And with ancient religions that aren't really being continuously practiced, it's very different from like if you're to be like, yeah, so then God showed up in the middle of the crusade and he was part of the Isu. The weirdest thing. For the same reason that it gets icky to do that kind of stuff with religion, and it's better to just avoid that. Taking the gaminess and the fiction part of it and putting that in the umbrella of a totally separate entity like, you know, Hidden Ones, Order of the Ancients, is just so much nicer than saying these real people did such and such, and that's the exact thing they messed up with the Vikings in Valhalla. Because just as I'm praising them for like, oh yeah, detach it, like make the Order of the Ancients, make the Hidden Ones their own thing, the fact that
there's
like, yeah, and
Templars.
then the Vikings did all this stuff, you end up putting the onus on the historical group and making the historical group do things that they didn't actually do. So,
Also, the meta plot of
praise
Valhalla
myself.
also mentions that it is explicitly called the Templars by the 800s. Like, that first email dump specifically mentions that. So, GG, we tried. Oh, by the way, my posse appears to have forgotten that the memo is white and red and not dust gray and red. I'm very sad about them. Oh, dang it. Wait, they still called me an infidel? They use the same... They use the same dialogue as they do for the Ayubit guards. So, good job. These guys just hit harder, but are otherwise exactly the same. And now we get to see, for some reason, Al-Mualim decided that he could give us all of our ranks back, which means we get to absolutely wreck all of these nerds.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, gosh. So,
Hey,
I feel bad when I try to explain a nuanced opinion of mine on Assassin's Creed, because usually I end up repeating myself and then contradicting myself, and I'm frustrated by that, so I apologize for the confusion that I'm probably levying on all of you, but I hope I was able to kind of make my point somewhat clear, that when you say that a real historical group or a real historical person did X, Y, and Z, you know, as shown in your game, it gets ickier as when you say, than when you say, oh, this fictional entity that I invented happens to be here for this event. And then you put all the weird stuff onto the fictional group, and you're not making judgment calls about the actual group. It is a slight nuance, but it really ends up making a difference.
Yeah. I agree with that, though. To some extent, I would contest that of, you know, a rose by any other name is not less...
yeah,
but
definitely.
it's... I don't know, but at the same time, names do matter. And the problem, of course, with the Templars is that they are a specific group who exist in a specific cultural moment. And trying to divorce them from that specific cultural moment is a big problem. Oh, dang it, am I gonna have to kill Malik? Aw. Feels bad.
No, he's chill.
Oh yeah, right. He sees Al-Mualim has gone completely nuts though, and is helping out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it seems. Guard yourself well, friend. Al-Mualim has betrayed
Boss,
us.
though, he sucks. Anyway,
Aw.
tune into Assassin's Creed Revelations to see where that plot line goes.
Yup.
But yeah, a rose by any other name is definitely a valid point. When you're doing historical fiction, the bar is fundamentally set so much higher because you're dealing with things that are and things that were,
Yeah.
and you are treading in. You're treading on thinner ice immediately when you start breaking a historical set of events. That's why, it's perfectly fine to take inspiration from certain historical cultures or historical events and use that as part of your world. God knows that's all of what Game of Thrones is. But
Alternatively, though, you could just write the name of the rose and be Umberto Eco, and then just get it all right.
Yeah. That's the thing, is like, still, obviously, the preferential outcome is that you do your research well, and then you put it all in the story, and then you're not just, like, doing nonsense, you're actually making it good. But for messing up, for when people inevitably will mess up unless they're Umberto Eco, it is less harmful when you do it the other way. But anyway, I'm just going in circles right now.
Yeah, it is. I don't know, big fan of Umberto Eco here. His works are incredibly influential with good reason, and the man did literally everything. So, turns out, if you want good advice for how to do historical fiction, just look at him. Because he was the best at it. But yeah, we are now going to punch Al-Mualim in the face. And just totally give up. We have just jumped the shark and are going into complete hilarious nonsense land because stupid magic powers. Stupid magic powers. So yeah, at this point I think we've pretty well summed up kind of what's weird about all the assassination targets, what's weird about their cultural portrayals, and kind of a little bit about, one of the main ideological conflicts in this game being really weird and really divorced from a kind of important context. Like, I don't know, a good case of them almost understanding it and then also completely taking away the context of anything that matters is with everything about the Hashashin, because they do an okay summary near the beginning of the Nizari conception of jihad, of struggle, being ultimately a struggle against oneself, first and foremost. And so all of their talk about finding peace is inner peace, and then acting out from that and manifesting even violent change in the world through inner peace ends up being ultimately the correct manifestation of struggle. And so but it gets completely divorced from that term and from that little bit of Ismaili thought, of Islamic Shia thought, that ends up being really important. And I mean, that frees it to be postmodern, right? That frees it to be ultimately the laws are constructed not by God but by us because we choose them, and therefore we are constantly trying to be better than ourselves. And it reaches the same point, but it reaches the same point in a different road. And that, I don't know, it
takes a bit of a squiggly path, yeah.
And divorcing it from that, it never actually questions what that means and what that divorcing does. Just like it never questions what happens when you make the Templars atheist. Or the fun question I proposed, actually, I want to get your opinion on as we're going, is what if Assassin's Creed was set 100 years, or not even 50 years later, in the 1240s, when the main problem, like, the Templars still exist, they've been losing battles for 50 years straight, the Hashashin still exist, they've been losing battles for about 30 years straight, and the Mongols exist.
Oh.
The game is set in the same spot, still set in the Levant, can still have the same cities be important. Masyaf isn't destroyed until, like, the 1340s. Actually, a little bit earlier than that. But it is in the 1320s? Sometime in the early 1300s. So, the Templars don't disband until 1307. So how does the game change if we set it
would
50
make
years
for a-
later, apart from all
That
the
would make for a
obvious
very
stuff?
interesting-
There's all the obvious stuff, you know, of the assassination targets need to be different, but yeah. How is the game fundamentally different?
That would be really interesting. I'll admit I'm showing a little bit of my blank spaces here. You know, aside from what you just described, I don't really know that much more about what the 1240s would have really been like. But if I had to offer something, I think there would be a much more fundamentally fatalistic outlook on the conflict. So, you know, with Assassins and Templars here in the Third Crusade, even though the whole point is like the Assassins and the Templars, as the Assassin's Creed lore understands it, are operating on both sides, it's still a 1v1 conflict. That dichotomy gets busted wide open if you set it in the 1240s. So a lot of the themes that you would get in later games were sometimes like, oh, we've got to actually kind of work together. Oh no, that would show up way earlier in, you know, this new version of Assassin's Creed 1. So you would probably have a lot more philosophical discussion between the characters, not just in this game where it's like, oh, I'm doing a good thing and you just can't realize it, where it's like, what is the middle ground between where we're operating? Is there a space where we can both be right? What is it about this third entity that, you know, that we do or don't understand? And giving them something to question beyond just something to fight against. So you have the Assassins are opposed to the Templars, but don't understand their position in regards to the Mongols, really. And the Templars are opposed to the Assassins. They don't really understand their position in regards to the Mongols, really. So it gives them a point of, like, unsureness and insecurity that would force them to introspect far more than they have to do when it's just, oh, they're the enemies, they have to be bad. And obviously you can still demonize the Mongols if, you know, they've been beating your ass for, you know, 40 or 30 straight years.
Yeah.
The like behind-the-scenes conflict would take on a much different tone, because theoretically both sides would be vying for influence within the Mongol courts. So in addition to fighting against each other, it would be a really like backdoor political play kind of game where you have to, you know, fight against the Templars while doing your best to maybe stay on the Mongols' good side, and you would have a lot more interesting conflicts born out of that game. Probably a bigger pain in the ass to write, but I think it would be a more interesting conflict. So
Yeah.
I'm for it.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you mentioned trying to make alliances with the Mongols, because that's exactly what the Hashashin did. They were, the second to last leader of the Hashashin actually did try and make an alliance with them, and then the last leader is basically a child who's not equipped in any way for that kind of diplomacy, and they just get completely thrashed. And Masyaf falls, and Alamut falls, and that's it. Just completely shut. The whole thing is just completely eliminated as a political entity. Because ultimately, I think that would be part of the question too, is really protection and establishment of political, I guess, a safe zone. A lot more of like Masyaf being attacked by Rabao at the beginning of the game. A lot less of everything else. Anyway, the reason I'm just kind of hanging out here waiting is because now we get to see all of our targets. I already killed William, I think. No, I killed Sibrand already. I can see William because he's got a terrible haircut.
Yeah.
So I already killed one of them. We're gonna start killing the rest of them here, because... Ow. Assuming they don't kill me... There we go, counter. Nailed it.
They hit pretty hard.
They do. They all hit extremely hard, and just dodging for like 20 minutes is probably not the best solution for how to avoid taking hits. Oh no, I'm dead. I'm super dead. Unless I can land a counter? Yeah, landed a counter.
Yeah, so Brother Jeremiah says it would force them to leave behind their Clash of Civilization narrative, although the problem might be how they would create a new narrative on giving an apocalyptic label to the Mongols as an unstoppable force. Yeah, it would trade the Clash of Civilizations narrative for the Steamroller of Civilizations narrative, which is not altogether inaccurate in the case of the Mongols. You see a lot of the building in the later 1200s and 1300s, especially with the Yuan dynasty, but in the early 1200s, it's pretty bleak.
Yeah, it's... I mean, to a point, but yes. We just got to see all of our guys. The last guy I killed was, my least favorite character, oh gosh, what's his face again? I can never...
Bulnukud.
Yep, Bulnukud, thank you. He was my least favorite guy, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
They almost
Actually,
do...
I'm gonna have to bounce after this Al-Mualim fight, because it is
Yeah.
getting to my bedtime.
Absolutely. And at that point, we're just kind of summing it up. I was just wasting time, so we could
we're having
easily
fun,
see all of them.
Yeah.
And now we are... Oh crap. Gonna have to be a little faster, aren't I? He is gonna wreck me if I don't take the aggression here.
Yeah, you gotta go hammering on them, or you gotta be really good at those blade counters.
Yeah, I'm just missing the sword counter, so there's no way I'm gonna try and take on a hidden blade counter.
Oh yeah. Actually, for a brief moment, Cleo pooped on the floor, and I need to take care of that.
Oh no.
Be right back.
Cleo. Okay, more fighting. I killed one. Now we gotta talk more.
Have you any final words?
You lied to me. Called Robert's goal foul when all along it was yours as well.
I've never been much good at sharing.
You won't succeed.
Uh-huh.
Others will find the strength to stand against you.
And this is why so long as men maintain free will, there can be no peace.
I killed the last man who spoke as such.
Bold words, boy.
Uh-huh.
Just words.
Sure they are.
I'll put words into action. Master.
Good dialogue.
Why did you not make me like the other assassins? Why allow
This
me to
is-
retain my
yep.
mind?
Who you are and what you do are twined too tight together. To rob you of one would have deprived me of the other. And those Templars had to die. But the truth is, I did try. In my study, when I showed you the treasure. But you are not like the others. You saw through the illusion.
Illusion?
That's all it's ever done. This Templar treasure,
Uh-huh.
this piece of Eden,
Yep.
this word of
No,
God.
they literally call a piece of Eden, like, so somehow this piece of Eden,
Was never parted. Water
proof
never
of
turned
paradise,
wine. It
the
was not
existence
the
of paradise,
machinations of Iris that spawned the Trojan War, but this illusions, all of them.
is somehow makes the Templars
Force
atheists.
men to follow you against their
Just
will.
gonna leave that out there, and that's kind of the suggestion of how the cultural contexts kind of get into a problem. Stripping of them of that means that you don't actually engage with how faith works and how faith intertwines with both of these groups' actions.
I'm simply giving them another, one that demands less blood.
At least they choose these phantoms.
Or do they? Aside from the occasional convert or heretic?
It isn't right.
And now logic has left you. In its place, you embrace emotion.
Yes, yes we do. Turns out, logic is not everything, Al-Mualim.
You will not follow me, and I
It's
cannot-
actually a tragic representation of these religious groups.
Seems
And it ends up being almost, I guess, anti-intellectual. It flirts with it.
I will miss you, Altair. You were my very best student.
Okay, sure. Ow, I dodged that. Rude. Rude.
Yeah, sorry, sometimes Cleo gets a little bit overzealous and runs a little bit too fast.
I can see
before
that.
She is fully ready to, so apologies, but I'm back.
Interesting. So yeah, I was just talking about kind of more about the faith because it's wild. Ow. I just died in one hit. Thank you. Thank you, Al-Mualim. I'm real grateful.
Oh my
but
god, that was cheap.
it was just it's flirting a little bit with kind of anti-intellectualism. For this whole piece of Eden stuff and everything about it. No. Ha! Got him on the first try. Just pull out the hidden blade and call it a day. And yeah, so nothing about this particular piece of Eden and its illusion powers truly suggests that it would cause anyone to become atheists in two deeply religious cultural groups. And so it ends up flirting with like conspiracy theory atheism.
You have won then.
It makes fun of it, makes fun of flat earthers, makes fun of anti-intellectuals, but then also says also the universities are wrong.
Destroy the only thing capable of ending the crusades
And it's weird.
and creating true peace?
It's weird.
Never.
Then I will.
Anyway,
Yeah, the pieces of Eden do very different things over the games. In Assassin's Creed 3, it's just an instant kill weapon. In Assassin's Creed 2, it specifically like shows you things. In Assassin's Creed 1, the whole idea is what they were talking about was just that it creates illusions, right? Yeah. Yeah. Don't like
Don't
that.
super love that,
That's not a good justification.
yeah, it's not great. And so also we get our nice...
Destroy it as you said you would.
I can't. I literally can't hit buttons.
I can't.
Uh-huh, thank you, Altair.
Oh no. But yeah, I think one of the misconceptions just in general, and this is a much larger discussion about like the medieval period, is that like, oh, they were so religious, they just like didn't let any progress happen, and that, you know, it's the flat earth, you know, church narrative of like, oh,
Castlevania the TV show, as good as it is, leans into it hard. Anti-progress church. No. It's all total nonsense.
Super gross things in Castlevania, most of which is forgetting that by the point in time that the show is set, Wallachia would have been Ottoman, but
yeah,
then they're like, yeah, here's this like Notre Dame like hunchback of here's this like hunchback of Notre Dame like French Catholic Church scheming like mustache twirling bad guy, except the Christians in the area would have been Byzantine Eastern Orthodox.
Yeah.
What the hell are you on about?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of weirdness in season 1 of Castlevania. But the whole thing of like the medieval period was like, Adam, what you were saying earlier of like the pursuit of theology was in learning and understanding the beauty of the world that God created. So like all of these intellectual pursuits were, you know, for religious reasons, in addition to you know, to being for, you know, for their own merits, and I think that this narrative helps to further the stereotypes of like, oh, the medieval period, they were also stuck in their religion, they didn't understand anything, it was only until the Renaissance and afterwards that we started sticking it to the church.
Dang
like,
you,
guys,
humanists! Come on, humanists!
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Luckily, like, this game doesn't go so far into that, but it does still kind of imply everything. It does a little bit imply that with Ibn Jubayr wanting to destroy books, destroy knowledge. Once again, they did Ibn Jubayr dirty. Because we didn't really talk about him. I wanted to talk about him for a moment before we totally end as we see all these weird shiny things. Don't know.
Oh, yeah.
No one knows what this is. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But Ibn Jubayr is like one of the greatest geographers and historians of the 13th century. And he creates a genre of travel literature known as a rihla that is used by Ibn Battuta a century later, explicit borrowings. And he himself draws on information from Herodotus to Ibn Fadlan. So over several thousand years of authority and history and travel accounts, in addition to his own observed experiences, to make the whole genre work. He was a brilliant scholar and a brilliant cataloger of expertise. The idea that he destroyed books is actually laughable.
It is slanderous.
Yes, it is. You know, I want to check if there are more emails before we wrap up, just in case if there's useful metaplot information. But we are basically at the very, very end here. I think as soon as I go to bed, the game ends, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, okay,
You
I
don't
don't...
even go to bed, you just go back into your room.
Exactly. I walked into my room and I walked out of my room, so I might have to click on go to bed. But yeah, so we are at the end. But, you know, one more note about knowledge and the things they were trying to do. So one of the categories of knowledge that medieval people thought was worthwhile was cataloging of animals, known as bestiaries. It is from bestiaries that we get some truly wacky animal designs, such as, you know, this cat. I don't think this cat is actually from a bestiary, but it is. If you want this cat as an emote, or any of the other options, such as this cheeky horse, or Mary punching the devil in the face, true story, then do consider subscribing to this channel when we unlock more emotes and are able to do keep unlocking emotes, keep supporting the channel. And then also on Saturday, we start Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It's $4.99 for a subscription, your first month of subscription, or if you have Twitch Prime, it is a grand total of free. So do consider doing that if you enjoyed this and want to keep supporting the channel. And, you know, thank you, Blue, for joining me as we wrap up somehow, some way.
Yeah,
Do I have to
thank you
leave
for
the
having
room?
me on. This was,
Of course.
This was really great. No, you activate your eagle vision.
Oh, I
and
have
you
to
look
eagle.
at the wall, and then that's when
Yep.
the game ends. Yeah.
Okay.
But thank you for having me on. This was really great. When you mentioned you were doing AC1, I was like, oh, a fun AC game that's less bad than Valhalla. Sign me up. And I'm glad that we were able to make this work. Timing accommodating. I was unfortunately busy like whoa for the past few weeks.
Yeah.
Because of my Valhalla review, which, Adam, you were very, very helpful in assisting me with scripting and research on, and my Lego Coliseum bit, which was fun, but a pain in the ass to turn around inside of 2 weeks, let me tell you that.
Oh, I'm sure.
So
That-
I appreciate you bearing with me and coordinating to find a time that works. And I'm glad that I could be here for the fun finale.
Yeah, I'm super glad you could join. And by the way, there's a question of am I going to wield double shield in Valhalla? So this point is where I announce that viewers of the channel, as we are kind of playing AC Valhalla every week on Saturdays, through using channel points, which you should have been collecting throughout this stream, you can an option will show up before Saturday to use those channel points to change one piece of equipment you guys specify, or cosmetics, so you can dress me up in whatever tattoos, nonsense armor, and weaponry you like. If that means making me use nothing but double shields, you have that power. Dear God, I will resent it, but I will do it. Because that's the deal. So, that option will exist, and you guys get to use your channel points, and cheers will always take priority over that. So, through channel points or through throwing tiny amounts of money at me, you can force me to do whatever torturous things will deplete my sanity fastest in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So you have that to look forward to.
I am looking forward to seeing how that goes.
Oh God, it's going to be a hot mess. Hot mess.
It was bad enough when we were just going through the game on the OSP stream at the very beginning when we were like,
yeah,
there's still some stuff they do okay. It's not terrible. And then just the more we thought about, we're like, oh no, this is bad. This is bad.
Funnily, the more I played it, the more I found it. They've done some things that are genuinely interesting, weird, but weird in a way that I can talk about. And so, kind of the first indication of that is going to be Ivar Vainlacey Ragnarsson. I can talk for probably an entire stream about him. Don't push me. You probably want to see progress in the game instead of just me talking about him. But that'll be like 3 streams in, because we've got all of Norway to get through first. Because we are starting at the very, very beginning, and theoretically going all the way to the very, very end, and if that takes us 6 months, so be it. So,
Godspeed,
I hope you
Adam.
all enjoyed this, and I will hopefully see many of you at 11 a.m. on Saturday, 11 a.m. Central Time, for the beginning of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Yeah, you're right. Godspeed to me. But yes, I do want to also say I'm going to have guest stars on of experts in various things. I'm hoping to get like a food historian on or Viking Age gender historian on. Celticist has already volunteered. Someone who does Arthurian romance in Norse is going to join for when we're doing like Excalibur in the game. So, you know, I've got a network, and I am leveraging it as far as I can for your guys' edutainment. So,
Yeah, guys. For those
seriously,
of you who are coming over, for those of you who are coming over from like the OSP stuff, like, please stick around. I can only be a guest on so many episodes, but like these streams are great, and y'all should stick around because like Adam's got 2 degrees and stuff. He's smart. He knows what he's on about. I'm just a classicist.
I have a master's degree in Viking studies. This game is set in the Viking Age. We're doing this all the way through.
If you want the Ranthallas, you will get the Ranthallas on these Ludo History Valhalla streams.
Absolutely. And we also do varieties of other streams, other history games, so make sure, once again, join the Discord and subscribe to the YouTube channel to see all of the streams that have been done all throughout the entire existence. Links are in the About section of